Go with us.
Work ethic. We're survivors.
If you want to change this, we got to make it ourselves.
She is relentless.
On to the next door.
My neighborhood, Pilsen, has been made possible by the generous support of the Caris Foundation, Incorporated.
Good evening, I'm Phil Ponce. Chicago Tonight will not be seen this evening, so we can bring you a special program, My Neighborhood, Pilsen. Over the next 2 hours, we will have the television premiere of the WTTW documentary, My Neighborhood Pilsen, which introduces us to some of the people making a difference there. We will also have a town hall discussion about important issues facing the community, such as immigration, public safety, and economic development. We are joined by an audience from the community, and we want to hear from you too. Tweet your questions and comments to us at WTTW using hashtag MyNeighborhood and hashtag Pilsen. We have also partnered with our friends at Univision Chicago, and we'll have reports from them later in the program. But before we present the documentary, a brief look at the rich and diverse history of Pilsen. It is a neighborhood that has been shaped and transformed by a number of immigrant populations beginning in the 1840s. Even today, Pilsen is experiencing change, pitting, as it always has, new arrivals with long-time residents. Here is Eddie Aruza with the story of a community that nearly dates back to the founding of Chicago.
The story of Pilsen is engraved on church cornerstones. It's carved onto pediments atop 19th century homes and told at the entryway of factories. It's chiseled in old world craftsmanship and painted in vibrant colors all around the community. It's a story of different languages and ethnicities from people who came looking for work and freedom. And while it was never easy, the story of Pilsen has always begun with a bienvenidos, or welcome. Chicago in the 1840s was a part of the American frontier, but in famine-ravaged Ireland, there was word of opportunities in this growing western gateway. Historian Peter Perrow describes what Irish immigrants were told.
There'll be work at the end of our trip when we arrive in Pilsen. Housing, we understand, is affordable.
The Irish were the first major immigrant population to arrive in the area that would only later be called Pilsen. They worked on the construction of the Illinois and Michigan Canal that connected the Great Lakes to the Mississippi River. Not long after, German immigrants arrived, bringing skills in printmaking and beer brewing. They were soon joined by arrivals from what is now the Czech Republic, Poland, and Lithuania. They found work in the furniture factories, lumber yards, ironworks, and most famously the stockyards, where conditions were difficult, dirty, and dangerous. The labor movement and development of unions can be traced to an 1877 violent clash between protesters and armed troops on South Halsted Street that left dozens of demonstrators dead or injured. Social reform pioneer Jane Addams established one of the first settlement houses in the U.S. just outside of Pilsen. The Hull House and later Gads Hill helped lead the way in what would be an ongoing struggle for fairness in housing and social services in underserved communities. But manufacturing jobs in Pilsen declined in the first half of the 20th century, and the Great Depression brought about what was later termed a blighted community. In the 1950s, however, a new wave of immigrants started discovering Pilsen. Among them was the father of the current alderman, Danny Solis.
He didn't have much of an education, third grade. He thought he could do better here. He had friends that were here. And so he came a couple years, 3 years before we did, fixed up our papers. And we came here legal. When he first came here, he was undocumented.
Teresa Fraga's parents were migrant workers living in Texas in the 1960s and taking whatever agricultural work they could get in the western U.S. But in 1966, the family was given a tip.
After 3 years of working in the fields, my godmother said, "You really should go to Chicago." She had just returned back from her first year in Chicago. She said, "You don't have to move around. There's factories and you can work there."
Fraga and her husband Refugio were first profiled by Channel 11 in a 1981 documentary about the struggles of the Mexican community in Pilsen. Like many of the immigrant groups that preceded them, the growing community of the 1960s and 70s faced many obstacles, from affordable housing to social and health services and adequate schools. Pilsen was also being transformed by City Hall as the first Daley administration's highway and UIC expansion projects pushed many families out of their homes.
So many Mexicans flowed back into this area that they thought was a port of entry and always a safety zone and their first home to begin with.
In the late 1960s, Teresa Fraga was on the forefront of education reform for her newly adopted community.
We needed a high school that our kids, that there was a 77% dropout rate. Benito Juarez took 5 years. It was a 5-year consistent battle.
But more challenges awaited. Unemployment skyrocketed and social services lagged. The community took it upon itself to establish the help that it needed with organizations such as Pilsen Neighbors, the Resurrection Project, and Casa Aslan. While a community organizer by the name of Carmen Velasquez tackled the need for health services by founding the Alivio Medical Center. Among the residents who began wielding political influence in Pilsen in the late 70s and early 80s was Rudy Lozano. He was killed, some say assassinated, by a reputed gang member in his Pilsen home on June 8, 1983, only months after losing a bid to become the first Mexican-American alderman in Chicago.
He was an outspoken man on many issues, on gentrification, one of the first to talk about that. He talked about many things that the city council wanted to push under the rug.
The 80s and 90s brought another challenge to Pilsen, growing gang activity. But it also saw the election of its first Mexican-American alderman, Juan Solis, in 1987, followed by Ambrosio Medrano in 1991. Both men left office following legal problems, and in 1996, Mayor Richard M. Daley appointed Danny Solis, who remains on the job.
Every ethnic group that's come to Pilsen has set up its own clubs and organizations as a way of preserving their language, culture, and even sporting traditions. The Germans brought their Turnhalles, the Czechs their Sokols, the Mexicans brought soccer clubs and have established one of the preeminent Mexican fine arts museums in the United States.
The community's pride in its heritage is also reflected in many traditions, such as the 18th Street Mexican Independence Day Parade in mid-September and the Via Crucis on Good Friday. The large-scale and colorful murals reflect both the traditions of the Mexican community and the aspirations for the future. But just as it has for more than 150 years, Pilsen is once again on the brink of change.
The changes are evident. Buildings are not being bought by another family. A developer buys a vacant lot, like across the street from my house right now. How do you stop that person from buying that building? You know, that's just a reality.
Mixing the desire for progress with a longing for community may be Pilsen's biggest challenge in this new century. For WTTW 11, I'm Eddie Aruza.
From Pilsen's past, we move to the community's present. We want to give attention to how the residents of Pilsen do the work of addressing the issues and challenges facing them today. Here is our documentary, My Neighborhood, Pilsen.
I love working and living in Pilsen. This is kind of a welcoming area if you're coming from Mexico or another Spanish-speaking country. Something that's special to Pilsen is we're not at the mercy of anyone. People know that we're all in this struggle together. Most recently, we've had these fires in Pilsen. Within hours, someone has started a GoFundMe page to help the families with the costs of having to replace everything and finding new homes. We see a need and then right away we do it ourselves. I work at Alivio Medical Center and I live down the street. I always tell people I'm Alivio's #1 fan. I would describe people at Alivio as just some of the most passionate people who feel strongly about increasing access to healthcare for people in our community, for people who, for a long time, nobody really cared about. Our founder, Carmen Velasquez, she said, why don't we have any resources in our community? All it takes is someone to be mad enough about this injustice, and now here we are with 3 clinics and then several school-based health centers.
Good morning. Good morning. How you doing?
A community that's well organized can do crazy, amazing things.
Alivio opened its doors on January 4th, 1989, having a goal that said we were going to serve everybody, that anybody who opened the door can come in. They may not have insurance, they may not have papers, the undocumented. But most of all, people come because they can trust us. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, and I never wanted to be a nurse or a doctor. I'm a community person, but I was indignant about the fact that we did not have a community health center here for the Mexican immigrant people who we are.
Pero lo bueno es que sí está bajando, so no se preocupe.
What we bring and what we have, nobody can take. Familia, family, values, language, history, culture, work ethic. I recognize there is this thing called social justice.
Gracias. Sí.
Bueno, entonces vamos a ver lo que tenemos por hoy.
O lo de mi cobertura médica, que me llegó el formulario y lo tengo que mandar antes.
Resurrection wanted to do a senior center. We staff it, and this is for low-income seniors. A community health center, housing for seniors and for families.
Va a seguir con lo mismo, con la tarjeta
sí.
de Medicare, la tarjeta de médica.
Ajá.
Entonces ya terminamos con esto.
¿Aquí una rayita?
Ajá. Ah, Socorro, acaba de ser tu cumpleaños.
Sí.
El sábado.
Sí.
Feliz cumpleaños.
Gracias.
¿Cantaste en tu propia fiesta?
Sí.
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 Y estas 3.
Que no soy nadie, que no soy nadie, que nada valgo sin tu querer.
Solamente si lo quieres guardar para leerlo, para practicar el inglés.
Imagínate que voy a leer todo esto.
Que sepas que estoy pagando con llanto amargo mi falso orgullo y mi vanidad.
Es para las personas. En el primer piso tenemos un centro comunitario. Bueno, antes de empezar a vivir con TRP, yo vivía en el 4º piso de una iglesia cristiana. Proyecto Resurrección me comentó de que estaban a punto de edificar un edificio para las personas de la tercera edad. Me dijeron que si quería yo moverme para acá y le dije que con mucho gusto. Este es mi departamento, tengo la sala de recibir, la cocina, una recámara, el baño y 3 closets. Yo me vine a vivir aquí desde el 2010, fue uno de los primeros inquilinos. Antes de terminarlo completamente, nos hicieron un tour, entonces cuando yo vine al 5º piso, miré este departamento y me gustó la vista. Esta es una de las fotos, una de las muchas fotos que he sacado hacia el centro. Y he tenido la oportunidad de sacar fotos en la noche, a veces cuando está el sol metiéndose o cuando está el sol saliendo también. Muy bonita vista.
¿Dónde está Dios dentro de nuestra vida? ¿Dónde está Dios dentro de nosotros mismos? Bueno, siempre tiene que ser el número uno, siempre tendría un taller completo de 9 clases, un taller de liderazgo. ¿Qué es la justicia social? Vamos a hablar de la diferencia entre justicia social y trabajo social. Para mí la palabra liderazgo significa poder y guía. Bueno, con esto vamos a empezar. Yo siempre digo, hay personas que están listas para atender, ¿no?, el llamado. Cuando tú hablas de liderazgo, estás hablando de compromiso, estás hablando de responsabilidad, estás hablando de ir más allá, de ir a la raíz del problema. ¿Estaban haciendo mal los aldeanos? Que ustedes empezaron a pensar en la realidad, porque realmente esto es un ejemplo, ¿no?, una parábola. Pero cuando nosotros vemos lo que estamos viviendo ahora, es lo mismo. Niños ahogándose y no precisamente en agua.
No queremos más policías, queremos más programas, más parques, más deportes. Yo por traerlos en actividades. A veces las actividades nos cuestan.
Porque sí llegamos cansados y nos cansamos de todo lo que hacemos en el día, pero tenemos que tener esa energía y el tiempo para llevarlos a un programa, porque sí hay.
Otro de los temas que se vieron hoy fue el tema de las elecciones. Quiero que ellos se den cuenta de qué tan importante es su participación dentro de todo esto. Bueno, vengo aquí como a las 2.
This is like, you can say my home. How did I say, it's where my family lives, you know. My kids are here and they are part of the neighborhood. This house is the first house we got in here in Chicago. We bought it in 1970. Used to be a candy store. All this neighborhood was Polish. When the neighbor next door, when he saw me coming, he says, there goes the neighborhood. But then afterwards, the lady fell in love with my kids, and they used to call her grandma, and when they were ready to sell, one of her sons wanted the property, and she says, no, that's for my grandkids. So she sold it to me. One of my daughters and her husband and her son lives here now. The house across the street, we bought it also in the late 80s. Same thing at the beginning, they didn't know me and they didn't feel comfortable with me, but then afterwards, you know, we become real good friends. And it's when my oldest daughter lives now, so that's her building. What can I say? You know, we love this place. A ver, vamos a ponerlo aquí que baile. Ándale, y tú vas a bailar con él. Okay, ¿listo? When I come here to Chicago, I start working in a steel mill, Republic Steel. I put 30 years in a steel mill. I'm officially become a babysitter with all my grandkids. It doesn't pay very well, but gives you a lot of problems. This table, there was, yeah, I painted it. There was Mario and Luigi here because they are a team. Okay, for instance, and this one in here, it's nothing but dots with the pen. I like the kids to get involved and do it with me. As you know, in our culture, we celebrate the Day of the Dead, and we have altars, you know, for our dead. That's my mother's. My mother was real devoted to the Virgin of Guadalupe, and so that's why we have the Virgin there. The kids and my wife put it together.
Let's get on the tour. So a little bit about the Resurrection Project. We were founded in 1990 by people in the community from 6 area parishes who worked together to envision a new future for the neighborhood. And what we decided we wanted to do was to actually create new housing in the community. We're going to drive to a section where this grain silo, which is a vestige from the past, ended up becoming a place what we called a shooting gallery. And the shooting gallery was not about shooting, although that took place there. It was more so about drug use in the neighborhood.
Q is a very unique development. The rents on these properties are restricted to be affordable from $300 to about $600 a month, when you look at a neighborhood where rents right now in market may be $900 to $2,000 a month.
The story behind this affordable housing development goes back to the neighbors' push demanding that the city tear down those grain silos. And this happened in the late 90s. And it was one of our board members, Raul Hernandez, who one of his early victories in the community organizing work, what we do, led that charge.
¿Se acuerda usted cuando estaban los silos aquí? Que era una cosa deprimente porque teníamos crimen, inseguridad y suciedad, incendios y todo. When I moved into this neighborhood, there was a lack of a lot of city services, a lot of abandoned buildings, a lot of absentee landlords. When we had a snowplow in the neighborhood, it was because the guy got lost. He found out that he was in Pilsen, you know, but other than that, he won't come this way. They don't come this way. ¿Y se acuerda de cuántos drogadictos y muertos que sacaban de allí? I remember my kids, especially my little girl, she told me one time, he says, when I grow up, I'm going to move out of Pilsen. I'm going to move to a suburban area. I don't like it here. And I told her, I says, you know what? I says, if we start running, we will never stop. We always run. If you want to change this, we got to make it ourselves. And so I thought to myself, I says, what did I say?
As residents of Pilsen, this shows how concerned you are for our community and how much you wish to improve it. Now I'd like to introduce Father Jim from St. Adalbert's.
Nel nome do Padre, do Filho, do Espírito Santo. Amen.
There were 6 of us, and we sit up in a table in here in St. Adalbert and did a little brainstorm, you know, try to figure out what to do. So we talked about housing, even though that we didn't know much about housing.
Mr. Medrano explained to us that the city was ready to demolish this building.
Ivy les tocaba la puerta, vamos a tener una reunión y muchos sí asistieron.
Y de allí fue donde ya nos hicieron caso para poder derrumbar los silos.
Sí, era la cuadra olvidada. Ahora yo cuando me asomo a la ventana y veo, digo, oh, qué diferencia.
When I started in this organization, I was a very young person, and Raul had been here for many years, elder statesman in the community, and we got along, you know, in common. And that was, how do we build a healthier community? Once we started gathering people, we started seeing that people had common interests, common values. And that's what really was the catalyst behind the Resurrection Project.
Wow. And what we're going to do, they come to search. We ask them, they give us the empty lots so we can build housing. He was not very happy camper, but publicly he says that he was going to give us the lots, because you know a politician is never going to say no in front of the people, and especially if there's a lot of people.
You have our 100% backing in our commitment to revitalize and rehab Pilsen for the people of the community. Thank you very much.
So he did give us the 24 lots, 24 houses that we built in the neighborhood.
We're gonna make a right on 16th. So we're gonna see some art here. On my right-hand side here are some of the new homes that we did in the early 90s. These lots here would have been home to all sorts of things. I mean, everything from garbage to gangs, you name it. Families are very proud to own them. Many of the homeowners that purchased them still own them.
You know, there's different types of leaders. There are self-proclaimed leaders. There are leaders who are elected. But I think the real leaders, with a capital L, are the residents. People who step up. They want to address issues on their block, in their community.
My name's Rosemary Dominguez.
They don't just talk about it. They take action.
An interesting perspective. I never knew that this place was called Pilsen. My whole life it wasn't until recently, maybe when I was in high school, that it was called Pilsen. I always knew it as La 18. Yeah, so over here is Libreria Girón. It's like one of the few Spanish language bookstores, really in the city. And then over here is the Jumping Bee, which is like kind kind of like a staple in the neighborhood. It's really how most people get to know Pilsen. It's one of the few spaces that attracts the most people. It's been open my whole life, really. So yeah, the bean's sweet, delicious. These vintage shops are something that popped up recently, maybe in the past 5 years or so. My mom always thinks they're hilarious because they're called vintage, right? They're not thrift shops anymore. Like I feel like the vintage name comes with like a heavy burden of like overpricing, and it's tailored to a specific community that maybe wasn't here before. Yeah, so this mural is called the Declaration of Immigration. It's a mural that was created by Yollocalli, which used to be housed in this space, in this building, no longer housed here. So it sort of talks about how the people in the neighborhood come from this background and sort of trying to humanize the people in the neighborhood as well. This is one of the last remnants of Yollocalli in this space. So this used to be Yollocalli. Yollocalli was a full space dedicated to art and art creation. Yollocalli was just huge. They served so many students at any given time. We would take free art classes here and usually get compensated for them through After School Matters. This room that we're in right now, I'm pretty sure was like one of the studio spaces. And it was fun. We took a lot of different classes. We started off taking mural classes, and then we took screen printing classes. But it was also literally a space for us to not be on the streets. It kept us out of trouble. When we were at a class, several times there were shootings where we would have been. Gabriel and some of my other friends would take these classes with like big graffiti artists, like Kane, Miguel Aguilar was one of their big teachers. I don't know, when you choose to become a graffiti artist, you choose a name. Gabriel chose the name Pasta, and that's what we always called him. I hardly ever called him Gabriel. I was Grubs. Gabriel was a friend of mine from 7th grade. He was easily like 5'9", 5'10", when we were like 13. So he walks into the class, this like towering, like super tall Mexican kid. And I don't know, I just immediately kind of clicked. Not only were we both not good in academic settings, but we both really had an interest for art and art creation. So like I had really high test scores and stuff like that, but I couldn't just do school, right? And I feel like he was one of the few people that understood what that felt like. Yeah, he was like a brother of mine. This is the easternmost part of Pilsen. It has a lot more cafes popping up. The real estate is higher. There's a bigger university student population. But my friend's mom opened this cafe a few years back, and it's becoming a really thriving environment.
We bring the community together. People from different walks of life, different cultures. You see everyone here. I'm here to show you where I come from, see my culture.
Well, I went in one day for a hot chocolate, and Diana was like, "Do you need a job?" I was super stoked. I was like, "I'm gonna get to work with Pasta. Like, we're gonna hang out all the time. Like, we could do like at-work shenanigans." I was there for like over a year, probably a year and a half, maybe.
Growing up, it was like gang violence, gun violence was very real. Me and my sister actually, one time walking home from school, we were stuck in a drive-by. They started shooting, and that's how bad it was. I was visiting family in Texas. They all started having a discussion regarding the presidential election coming up. They were in a really deep discussion, very passionate. I just asked the question, so did you guys vote in the primaries? And everyone said no. No one had voted. And after that, I was like, this is what I have to do. We're reaching out to Juarez to get students to actually come out and volunteer and help us canvas. When I approach somebody on the streets to ask them if they're registered, and I get that, nah, I'm not into it, like, I don't want to be part of this. Vote for me. I can't vote. Please, like, it's a matter, like, I care, and you should care too.
Benito Juarez Community Academy opened in the late 70s. It was built by activists. The spirit of that is definitely present in this building. The vision here is that Juarez is a center of community. I push for everything to happen here. And organizations, churches, parents, families need to have access to that. This is why I don't close our doors until 8 p.m. every single day.
The sign-in sheet. Could be somebody's got it. Okay.
If anyone needs a space, my hand will always go up to volunteer, to host.
Sign it and pass it around.
Juan Carlos Ocon, principal of Benito Juárez Community Academy.
Antonio Acevedo, principal at Whittier.
Nuri Suceta, community organizer with Pilsen Neighbors.
Salvador Serna, I'm the community tech director for the Resurrection Project.
The Resurrection Project, along with key agencies, organizations in this community, established this Pilsen Planning Committee, the PPC. We came together around a single vision, single goal of making Pilsen better for our residents.
There's been very few communities claim that in 10 years, an event has gone on through a grassroots movement.
Alivio Medical Center, Instituto Progreso Latino, Pilsen Neighbors. The Pilsen Planning Committee is the vehicle by which many of these organizations have come together to put forward a new quality of life plan from the community.
We go to work every month and try to make this community stronger, better. And that's what a family does.
Clearly, these were all the right folks to have in the room, right?
The people make this neighborhood, just like the people make our city. Our city doesn't make us. I believe that this next generation make and create this community. Without that stamp, we would not be a good neighborhood.
Hey guys, how are you? I'm Julio from La Casa. Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Lauren from Alivio Medical Center.
Welcome to La Casa. Welcome to the Student Resource Center.
Hi, Erica. Lauren. Erica. I'm thinking about going to UIC because it's very locally.
We welcome students from all universities. The number one thing we expect from students, they form a community with all students committed to what's the one thing we expect from all of our kids, all of our students?
Committed to graduating.
That's right, committed to graduating college.
I'm undocumented, so obviously I can't apply to FAFSA, and I mean college is really expensive. So I mean, I don't know if like living in the college will be affordable.
For students that are undocumented, the staff here are sensitive to that issue, very supportive. La Casa is really developed with you in mind, students from the communities we serve.
I started mentoring 2 high school girls about 4 years ago. I didn't anticipate that it would be so emotional and such an investment. Both of the girls have big dreams, which I'm always encouraging them. Like, your dreams should scare you. That's how good they should be.
So here's the kitchen.
We're having conversations on what does that mean? That means you're gonna have to be disciplined. That's the key word this year.
When you move in here, it's already furnished. So like the couches and chairs and the table is already here. We have a television with cable, although you don't get like a lot of time to watch it.
I'm here not having to be here. And so you've had help, and maybe you have to, at some point in your life, go back and help someone else. I'm all about healthy cycles. We're gonna go inside La Catrina. It's one of my favorite coffee shops. Hi. I'm gonna get a small dirty abuelita.
Whipped cream on both?
Yes. Not on mine. And this space is really in remembrance to Gabriel Cisneros, the owner's son, who passed away this May. I was telling Diana, you can tell that this room has a lot of love, and yeah. And then this is artwork that he did as well. And this is one of his bikes. They put like the wings on his bike. Yeah, and then that's one of the ofrendas here in the coffee shop.
There's a lot of him here, which makes him present. The walls are painted as some of his favorite shirts. His Benito Juárez and a striped shirt. I have 3 children. My youngest is Gabriel, who has passed away. Gabriel was very hardworking. He was here at least 6 days a week. He loved art. He started with drawing a monster, little monsters, big heads, just big eyes, monsters.
He's my nephew, and he was my nephew. The only encouragement that I did to him was that I told him once, I said, this is something that runs in the family. So you inherit this, and so you have to do it, and do it well. I mean, he was an artist.
I found out like a week before he passed that he was using heroin.
Gabriel admitted that he had just started it, and he said that he can get off of it. He didn't need help. He couldn't get off of it. On Sunday, Mother's Day, is when he passed away. It just happened so quickly. It's like 2 months. 2 months of sleepless nights, worrying, getting up middle of the night, reading all the literature available online, trying to educate myself about the drug and the symptoms and the healing, and it would just happen too fast, too soon. He left us with baby on the way, Olivia, and his girlfriend Paula. Paula and Gabriel have been going out for probably more than 2 years. Gabriel knew Paula was pregnant. She now stays with me. So she's like my other daughter. Ew, who are you?
What's up?
Let's see
Just
you.
gonna hang out for a bit?
Yeah, cool.
You mind if can I get a coffee?
Only if you make it yourself.
Okay.
You can use your favorite mug.
Yeah.
We invited some of his friends to do some paintings, some artwork that reminded them of Gabriel.
The show's called Everything Was Beautiful.
And Nothing Hurt.
It's from Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. It's something that was one of my favorite books, one of Gabriel's favorite books, and one of my favorite quotes. We created pieces based on not only our reactions, but also how we understood Gabriel as a person. One of my friends, he created a mask based on one of Gabriel's favorite movies, Princess Mononoke. It was a fantastic piece. I drew like an anatomical heart being clenched in a fist, trying to illustrate the moment that I found out about Gabriel's death in the most concise way I could do so.
They did it out of passion and a lot of meaning, and it's just really beautiful. Probably leave this on until the end of the year.
Oh, cool.
Because I don't have anybody exhibiting.
And if we keep adding to it, it's kind of like this.
Yep.
Like growing.
This is growing.
Too. This is our lunchroom, or this was, I mean, I guess this is still the lunchroom, but it was my lunchroom when I was here. So it's set up like Hogwarts style, like 4 houses. And we had something similar. We had familias. So each familia would sit at their section, which was cool. And the familia is like the name that's given to like homeroom classes here. I didn't do well in school, right? And I was eventually pushed out. And then coming to Rudy and being put in a classroom where we're talking about Latin American history and like guerrilla revolutionary leaders in a group of 15 students who come from a very similar environment to you, who are all there because they want to finish high school. It's way more than like a dumping ground, so to speak.
The challenge isn't often the learner. The challenge is often the learning environment. So when they find it, oh my gosh, it's like all of that was in them already, that nobody saw before, just comes out, and it's beautiful. It's that learner that inspires us. We have 2 schools, the Instituto Justice and Leadership Academy that works with 16 to 21-year-old youth that have for some reason left their previous school and are finding a better opportunity with us. And we have the Institute of Health Sciences Career Academy that takes kids and graduates them with a high school diploma and career education in healthcare.
That school's crazy. That facility is fantastic. They're like a different kind of student. They have like uniforms and stuff, and they have different models of teaching.
The building we're in right now was actually developed by a Resurrection project. So when I needed a school to be built in 7 months, we called our friends at Resurrection and said, can you do this? And they said, we're gonna try, and they did. The building used to be a furniture factory. It was abandoned for many years. Isla has an amazing spirit to it because of what it was. Isla was the Roadway House Motel, situated next to the Hardway House Bar, a half a block away from the XXX adult bookstore, and it serviced truckers. The education that's happening in there is quite transformative.
I've had a relationship with this organization indirectly for many, many years, even before I was in high school. Like my mother, she definitely took Instituto sponsored or led classes for English, like when I was maybe like a freshman in high school. And then when she was getting her citizenship test done, she took the citizenship classes and through Instituto as well. So my older sister despised school her whole life, and it wasn't until she came to Rudy that she felt that people were taking an interest in not only helping her finish school, but also fixing her problems outside of the academic setting. So the institution's definitely benefited my family, at least. And hopefully my family being benefited benefits the rest of the universe. Thank you guys so much for coming to the National Museum of Mexican Art. My name is Gilberto. I'll be your tour guide today. And I'm going to be taking you through the Nuestras Historias exhibit. It's our permanent collection here at the National Museum of Mexican Art. Having the job that I have is very fun. Aniztaccíhuatl, in her eternal dormant position, covered with earth and snow and ice, turns into the dormant volcano, Iztaccíhuatl. Speaking about Mexican history, Mexican art is like what I would do for fun. So like getting paid to do so is an opportunity that I can't pass up. The sun is setting behind the valley of the mountains in the Sierra Madre, and of course, some of the kids from Ishka take tours at the museum sometimes, and it's kind of fun. Someone's like, yo, I went to Rudy, and they're like, how'd you get this job here? And I was like, I'm not sure. I'm telling you, I don't know. So the one restriction or the one stipulation I have to keeping my job is that I maintain enrollment in college. And that's forced me to stay in school. I can't leave. I'm not gonna risk losing my job because I don't enjoy like academic settings. And from that perspective, you can see a deceased field worker. So shout out to the museum for keeping me in school. This last piece is created by Mario Castillo. It was made in 1996. Mario Castillo was part of this movement that we very creatively call the Chicago Mexican Muralist movement. When you're asked something like stay in school so you can keep this job, it makes you feel like maybe your betterment and your academic prosperity is a part of that institutional growth. It's important to remember that as Mexicanos here in the state, we didn't leave Mexico behind, but we brought Mexico with us. Thank you. Yeah.
Mujeres is the oldest Latina organization actually in the United States. Bianca lives a few houses down from the youth center. Bianca has a special place in my heart because I've watched her grow up. When I started working here, I believe she was like in 4th or 5th grade. She's almost a perfectionist, this kid. How's it going? She mentioned to me once, she said she wanted to go to college and that one day she wanted to be a president. The other day I said that to her and she's like, I didn't say that. I go, yes, you did. You said that. Her grandmother would come to our meetings. She was very active. Her grandpa is someone that she does look up to, Raul. Educating and informing the next generation is a passion that I have as a youth director here. It looks like all of you are getting it. The only thing I don't see yet is the motion. Have you gotten that yet, any of you? Helping these young kids out, it reminds me of when I was younger and I really didn't have places to go after school. And I really didn't have role models and I really didn't have individuals that actually were paving roads for me in a sense besides my immediate family. They need to see individuals that look like them or that came from where they came from. If you're educated, no one can take that from you.
Many times our youth from the media, from everywhere here, no, you can't, you can't, you can't. Well, the idea in our youth program is dream big, think big. I've heard some of them say, I want to be an engineer. I'd like to be an MD, a speech pathologist.
I want one of them to later tell me, oh, you know what, I'm an astronaut.
Mujeres Latinas en Acción was founded by a group of community women from Pilsen. Many of them were young, college-age graduate students from the University of Illinois. The philosophy of Mujeres is the following. You strengthen a woman, you strengthen a family. You strengthen a family, you strengthen a community. You strengthen a community, you absolutely are strengthening a nation.
What are you drinking? Chamomile? Yeah.
When I first met Lauren, she was just a customer. And I like to ask, like, hey, you work around here or do you live around here?
I registered for the event. I think it's probably in Aurora and more towards that way because that's where most of the epidemic is concentrated. But here too is what a lot of people I think keep forgetting. Pilsen too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Diana's my neighbor, and La Catrina Cafe is a cultural safe space for so many of us. I think we've all kind of collectively pulled together and offered Diana, you know, how can we help you? This needs to supplement, like things coming out from us, from like the community to supplement whatever the county is doing.
I was looking at the panel and I'm like, okay, can you open that again?
Mm-hmm.
So you have the cop,
the kid, and special guests.
But they also need survivor. We're survivors of the epidemic, and hopefully, you know, if we can save a life, we'll save a life. We'll touch as many people as possible.
So then I told my boss, our families don't talk about this enough. Here at Alivio, our mission statement is we're an active presence in the community. So let's be active, raise these issues within the schools, you know, mentor these kids who could be at risk. Stop this here at home. The Education Task Force Subcommittee met on Thursday, and everyone's really excited and enthusiastic about hopefully getting started with a mentorship program. We're not sure if it might be hosted there at Benito Juarez, but just really as a way for us in the community to respond to the heroin epidemic and the overall drug problem.
And I think that your idea of doing something at Juarez really makes a lot of sense because we already have the medical center inside the school. We have real live testimony of people in the community who have really suffered terribly because of what's going on.
Pilsen ha cambiado muchísimo y aunque quisiéramos que siguiera siendo una comunidad para familias mexicanas, no creo que muchas de las familias mexicanas lo consideramos así. Ahora lo veo como un barrio de Estados Unidos, un barrio de Chicago. Este año perdimos 3 parroquias aquí en Pilsen. Y esto es uno de los factores, es el cambio. Como cerrar una tienda que simplemente ya no está vendiendo. Esto es doloroso. Mi fe y mi espiritualidad viene de las personas que me han rodeado.
Compartiendo el mismo amor, la misma caridad que él había recibido del Señor.
La parroquia de San Pío tiene un gran historial, ¿no?, de servicio con la comunidad, así que llegué al lugar más indicado. participado en muchas campañas de registración de votantes y después para sacar el voto. Sabemos que hay personas que no están muy contentas con los líderes que tenemos ahorita como candidatos y piensan que no es necesario votar porque todo va a seguir igual. Yo les pido que piensen 2 veces el impacto que van a tener cuando ustedes no votan y la manera en que ustedes van a afectar a 11 millones de indocumentados, 5 millones de soñadores que esperan una oportunidad. Que todos los que son ciudadanos hagan uso de su poder. Muchísimas gracias. Esa es culpa de Padre Carlos Dam de San Pío. Yo he sido feligrés de San Pío por los 20 años que he estado aquí. ¿Va a votar por primera vez?
No, ya van 2 veces.
Ah, la segunda. Ok.
Felipe Andrés Ocampo.
Antes de las votaciones puede...
Cuando él me conoció más, él me invita a pertenecer a un grupo de justicia social. Él dice, mi sueño siempre ha sido tener un grupo en San Pío que se dedique a la justicia social. Siempre tenemos que buscar la que ofrezca más para el pueblo, ¿no? Para la gente necesitada y la necesidad ahorita es definitivamente para nosotros una reforma migratoria. Ahorita a votar.
There's over 27 million registered Latinos in the United States, but unfortunately only half of those actually make it out to the polls.
Well, I just wanted to touch base on the volunteers with PJ for tomorrow.
Okay, yeah. We're gonna have anywhere from like 25 to probably 35 kids here, I would say. 13 all the way to 19.
That's awesome. That's so great.
Okay,
They're gonna
so-
really help us out in this mass canvassing.
Yeah,
so.
this is really good for them, as I mentioned to you before.
Mujeres Latinas en Acción is one of the organizations that hosts with this Get Out the Vote effort.
939 doors that we'll be knocking on. So
All right,
we're
it'll
trying
happen,
to,
it'll happen.
So we're trying to really like push this for one day, doing a 3-hour shift.
Okay.
So we can like get a group.
And then we'll come back. Yeah, we want them because we want to debrief. We want to see how it went.
We want to regroup them and just so they can hear from their experiences.
Right. We already got 30 plus kids out there, so my interns out there, anything else that you need from me.
We're gonna go out there and knock. We're gonna go out there and remind them of the important dates coming up. I'll ask Marisa for her list. All right. Hey, girl. How's it going? How's it been so far?
Refused, hasn't answered, or shut the door in our face.
You really had that? No. How did that make you feel? I hope that fueled you. Don't let that be something that's not gonna motivate you in life.
She is relentless.
On to the next door. So we're gonna need to be like knocking on every door, like, hey, it's election day, please go out and vote.
She is someone who understands that in order to get things done, you got to keep at it. She was in the business of getting people out to vote.
Hola, buenas tardes. ¿Habla español? Sí. Hola, estamos buscando a Santos o a Rosa o Michelle. Pero vive aquí.
No.
Pero,
no vive aquí.
oh, ya no vive, se movió.
Sí,
Oh, ok. ¿Usted ya está registrado para votar?
Sí.
No sé si quiere usted hacer una promesa de voto. Estamos tratando de motivar a la gente.
Vamos a votar.
¿Sí? ¿Estás seguro?
Claro
Bueno,
que sí.
perfecto.
Votamos cada vez.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Que tenga buenas tardes. Adiós. I originally came to Mujeres because I wanted to start my own business, and I knew that they had Empresarias del Futuro, where they help Latinas in starting a new business. My son, his name's Rogelio. We call him Roro. He's an inspiring businessman, he says, because he sells sugar skulls around Day of the Dead time. I got this idea from him. How about we sell boy clothes for young little professionals? My son wants to send that message. We're boys, we're gonna inspire others, we're gonna inspire each other, and we're gonna look good doing it.
She's a natural leader because she understands our community, but she also understands it from the first voice of how it impacts her family and therefore her community.
Yo creo que cuando ves a tus hijos con opciones limitadas, es lo peor que puedes sentir. Yeah. Ya casi. Con tu ayuda. ¿Verdad que con ese exprimidor se batalla más? Yo cuando llegué a Chicago traía 2 hijas, una de 5 años y una de 1 año y medio. Entonces ellas no tienen un estatus al llegar aquí. Y hace 16 años nacen unas gemelas. Entonces ellas son ciudadanas. Salma le va a tocar comer frijoles por no comer ceviche. ¡Hey, ya está lista la comida! Hijos que no están presentes. Gorda.
En los días que no estoy trabajando, esto es lo más especial para mí. Gracias por darme ese tiempo con mi familia. Amén.
Amén. El lunes vamos a llevar a un grupo de personas a que hagan la votación temprana, porque ya va a empezar en otros lados, no solo en el centro.
Yo sé que algunas veces mucha gente no sabe qué decidir.
Pero hay personas que dicen, oh, bueno, pues me voy a ir a México.
Sí, hay muchos que dicen, oh, ya, a empezar a pagar las maletas.
Ajá.
Que nos vamos a Canadá.
¿A Canadá, de verdad?
Sí.
Dicen. Saliendo con todo esto, salió una señora que me dice que cuándo se tiene que renovar DACA.
¿Qué es DACA?
¿Qué es DACA? ¿Te das cuenta o te entra como el remordimiento de si hice bien en venir acá? Si hubiera sido mejor que me quedara allá y mis hijas no iban a ser ni discriminadas ni limitadas, ¿no? Por eso estamos tan preocupados por las elecciones.
Por eso esta elección es tan importante para mí, porque yo de un día para el otro quedo sin trabajo, sin perdón, sin nada, y they can just decide to leave me out.
But you're smart, because like you renew it every once. Do you have like
Sí,
a
pero
reminder?
ellos pueden decir, ya se acabó de acá.
I didn't know that.
Tú eres ciudadana, tú eres nacida aquí y eso, gracias a Dios, eso es algo que tú no vas a padecer. Pero tus hermanas sí. Oh, chiquita.
Pero también es que nuestros amigos son los documentados.
Puede ser de 10 amigos que tienes, a lo mejor hay 3 indocumentados. De 10, pero hay 7 que pueden cambiar, pueden tomar una decisión. Por eso la campaña que nosotros empezamos ahí se llama Vota por mí. No pienses en ti, piensa en mí. Así tenemos que decir, ¿no? Lo que tú decidas va a decidir lo que va a pasar conmigo. Este loco está tratando de afectar a todo el mundo. Va a afectar a todo el país. Pero directamente nos va a afectar a nosotros.
Caballo tiene mi amigo Micho Bravo, camina para adelante, camina para el costado. Qué buen caballo tiene mi amigo Nicolás, camina por delante, camina por detrás.
Nicolás, Nicolás, Nicolás y Nicolás, con mucho que te quiero, más poco que me das. Si quieres, si puedes, si no ya lo verás. Ay, qué bonito baila la mujer de Nicolás.
It's from my uncle Gabriel. Took the colors and everything.
This is an altar that we did in honor of kids that have committed suicide due to bullying. I don't know if you guys are interested. You guys can take a flyer. Thank you. Thank you.
I was lucky enough to be invited by your locality Arts Reach to create a piece for Gabriel Cisneros. The ofrenda that's in display right now for our Day of the Dead show. So the ofrenda is a space that is intended to welcome Gabriel's soul back and hopefully houses him during the celebration. Can educate people that didn't get a chance to meet him. You can look at this piece and learn a lot about him. The piece has a collection of artifacts that was donated by Diana, by his mother. Things that are personal possessions of his, examples of his literature, examples of art supplies, his guitar. We translated one of his characters into this three-tiered structure, a reference to like the three-tiered structure that's very traditional to Mexico during the celebration. His mom's name, Diana, is on the piece. But everything that's on the walls was a tattoo that Gabriel had. As a tour guide, I get to speak about it every day. It's nice to speak about my friend. It's kind of fun.
Yes, I love the Day of the Dead. Always having a friend up and a family home.
How are you? Good. Hi. Hi. This is my roommate Lorena. I don't know if you can meet you. So Fernanda has, it feels like it has just as much love as like the one in your cafe.
My son's here. Caesar. My whole family was there. My son came in from Houston, him and his cousin and his girlfriend.
Come on. Susana, you coming?
It was just great to have my family together. It was beautiful. Paola gave birth October 22nd. Paola stays with me and Olivia stay with me. Mom is so good with her right now. Oh, she's brought so much joy to our lives. Every time I see baby, it's a little Gabriel.
¿Cuándo nació?
Hace una semana.
Oh, precisamente estamos hablando de ahorita en la mañana de que la bebé ya debe haber nacido. Sí. Costumbre que ya se celebra no únicamente en México, sino en toda Latinoamérica.
Today's November 9th, and it's a sad day for a lot of people.
Sabíamos que eran unas elecciones bien duras, pero realmente nunca creí que el Partido Republicano nos iba a ganar así.
Everyone is just in fear.
Lo único que pude pensar fue en mis hijas. A lo que más le temo es a que mis hijas pierdan la esperanza.
¿Qué pasó?
It's a struggle. That's what I've learned. We're always going to have to fight for something. Just continue to fight for our rights.
It's definitely going to happen.
Our families, for our communities. Fight for our country.
Uh-oh.
And that is the premiere of the documentary My Neighborhood Pilsen, produced by Dan Andrews. If you were inspired by the story of Pilsen and its residents, WTTW will present screenings of the documentary you've just seen throughout the spring and summer. Visit WTTW.com/myneighborhood to let us know if you are interested in having a screening or discussion in your neighborhood. Tonight you are watching a 2-hour television event including a town hall discussion, and we really want to hear from you. Tweet your questions and comments to us at WTTW using hashtag #MyNeighborhood and hashtag Pilsen. We have a studio audience here, and we will hear from them in a little while about issues of public safety and economic development. But first, a bit about immigration. The documentary touched on the subject with reaction from residents just after the election. Of course, we could spend an entire program on the issue, but tonight we've decided to focus on what's been happening in Pilsen with regard to immigration under the new administration. And here to report on that from our partner in tonight's town hall, Univision Chicago, is news anchor Erica Maldonado. Erica, thank you for joining us. And first of all, based on your conversations with people in the neighborhood since the election, what is the sense of the community? What are the feelings in the community?
Well, Phil, thank you for having us, first and foremost. It is very difficult to pinpoint exactly what's going on, in the sense that you have now such a diversity in Pilsen. There is fear. There was a lot of fear at the beginning of the administration, and there is still fear. But also, I think it's very important that we do not generalize or make it think that everybody feels or think the same about immigration in Pilsen. We cannot be oblivious to the fact that new people is moving into the neighborhood and they come with their own ideas. So we have everything in the spectrum. We have people that actually support the administration and the measurements of the executive orders and some of the change in policy from immigration and customs enforcement. And of course, you have people that have been living in Pilsen for 40, 50, 30 years that are residents and citizens and want to keep being in this community, living and improving this community. And you have undocumented immigrants that those will be the most, that are at most danger and at most fear every day that they leave their homes to go to work. So what we have experience at Univision, either with our audience and through our social media, and that is actually what organizations that work so actively in Pilsen have reported too, is that at the beginning there was a struggle of the unknown. They wanted to know what is going to happen, and I'm going to be arrested. Is my family member going to be deported? Am I losing my friends? Am I fear at going to school for the youth? That fear has curved a little bit. It's not that it has disappeared, because I think that still some policies are up in the air, but definitely the fact that Pilsen has not been the scenario of massive raids or even punctual operations to remove certain people has given Pilsen a little bit more of calm, and I think that people can go to work now and figure out what's going on as days goes by in these first 100 days of the Trump administration.
Based on your reporting and based on what your news team has been able to find, is ICE active, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement? Are they active in Pilsen?
We haven't received specific operations in Pilsen at this point in time, different than other communities. For example, if you compare Pilsen to Little Village, where they have had certain operations and the fear is bigger, we have seen that, for example, in Little Village, people have stopped going out and consume or spend money in businesses. The businesses in Pilsen has not been affected to that extent, which means that in Pilsen, I think the fear has been a little bit less noticeable in that regard. Nevertheless, the fear is there for a big part of the community. I think that also the fact that Pilsen is so organized and it has so many community organizations that are going door to door, that are going to schools, actually explaining the people's rights and what to do, what not to do, has at this point in time curbed a little bit of that fear, so people can be proactive and continue to go on with their lives, because the truth of the matter is our community is extremely hardworking and they need to put food on the table for our families. The other thing that I want to be very clear about is that you have all the spectrum of opinions in Pilsen in regards of immigration. But the truth of the matter is that people sometimes do not express them. So it is actually hard to know exactly what's going on. Somehow I want to use this platform to say two things. First, the fact that someone has an opinion in immigration doesn't mean that immediately becomes an opinion on Latinos. It's two different things. You have people in the community that respect the hardworking Latinos, but might feel that they have to get back on the line. Some people want full immigration reform, which is what really is needed for our communities and for hardworking families that have been in the country in the shadows for so long. But you also have a consensus, I will say, that no one wants criminals and people that do not abide by the law in this country, because that ultimately taint the image of the Latinos and the Latino communities, not only in Pilsen, but in Chicago, in Cook County, in Illinois, and in the entire United States. So we want the families from Pilsen to be recognized for the hard work that they have put to better this community, to make it a safe place, a great neighborhood to live in. Now other families and other people want to move into the community. And that is also why we're seeing a diversity. It's not the same way that it was in the 90s or the beginning of the 2000s, where 90% of the Latinos that live in Pilsen were, from Mexico, established there. Unfortunately, we're seeing, a little bit of the gentrification, and I'm positive you're going to touch on that later on too. But that is also why we have now a broad range of opinions. And it is important not to generalize, not to put everybody on the same bag, and most and foremost, respect everybody's opinion on this matter, and do not equate what you feel about immigration with Latinos.
Erica Maldonado, thank you so much for your reporting and your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Phil, for having me.
Next, we tackle the issue of public safety. Like every community in Chicago, Pilsen is dealing with issues of crime and violence. But crime has been going down over the past decade. Here with more from our partner Univision Chicago is reporter Adriana Cardona.
As a resident of Pilsen myself, I love walking along 18th Street on a sunny afternoon, staring at the colorful murals and hanging out in the artsy cafes. Though Pilsen has long been home to many Mexican families, it has become more and more popular among new residents of various ethnicities, many of them young professionals who are able to afford the rising cost of housing in the area.
When it comes to public safety, the community has experienced its highs and lows. So I went out and asked residents and businesses, do you feel safe in the neighborhood?
No, hay mucha inseguridad, no solamente nosotros, sino en varios negocios alrededor de aquí que han sido robados.
I do. Most of the time I keep myself keeping an eye, and then from there I search around in my corners most of the time too.
It's really safe, lots of families around. Obviously there's gang violence, but I feel like that's unfortunately mostly contained to itself, and then just about being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Pilsen is neither the most dangerous nor the safest neighborhood in Chicago. According to police data, crime in Pilsen has gone down over the past 14 years. But last year, the community had 10 homicides and nearly 600 theft-related crimes. Residents like David Pintor were also in shock after a man set 6 properties on fire last fall.
So when I think of violence in Pilsen, I think about how there was all these fires in Pilsen, right? And they weren't done by a gang member. Those fires weren't done by somebody from the neighborhood. They were done by some crazy white dude, right?
The community has also been affected by local gangs that establish a presence in some pockets of the neighborhood. But who's responsible for the recent crime in Pilsen? It's hard to tell. Police data is not always clear or updated about who are the perpetrators behind each crime. But what we do know is that Pilsen is full of residents who are working hard at keeping the community safe. Sandy Chavez is one of them. She has lived in Pilsen all her life and knows how dangerous her block can get.
We just had recently 3 shootings on Morgan Street within the last week, and no one was hurt, thank God.
Hey Ed, what's up? That doesn't stop her from being involved in promoting safety across her neighborhood. She helps organize block parties, basketball tournaments, toy drives, and a phone tree that nearby residents can call if they hear shots.
I immediately call 911, and I communicate with everyone else on my block to call 911. The more calls we get, the more serious the call is taken.
Represent the neighborhood.
Another resident is Pablo Serrano, an artist and a karaoke DJ who grew up near the Dvorak Park. He's organizing the Pilsen Civic group, an initiative that connects Pilsen residents from all corners of the neighborhood through social events. He has also led mural projects to involve local youth in positive initiatives. One of them is the mural on Cullerton and Carpenter, a tribute to his friend's son who was shot and killed the day after his 19th birthday.
It was also a community effort, not perfect, but to bring people together and to synthesize who we are, where we are, what are some of the challenges that we're facing that are obviously highlighted when we experience tragedies like this. You know, that could have been my son.
That owns this building, he was on his land.
Most of the residents I talked with said instead of more police, local residents need resources, employment, and opportunities to stay in their community. And across the board, they agreed on one thing. Whether you are in Pilsen to stay or if you're just passing through, all residents need to come together, respect their community, and get to know one another.
Silence is fatal to our community spirit. If we organize, if we barbecue, if we paint them, if we close them, organize block parties, festivals, we can start seeing the best in each other and building from there. That's the ultimate response to a climate of fear that keeps us paralyzed to do anything meaningful in response to the challenges that we face with public safety.
For Univision and WTTW, I am Adriana Cardona.
Now joining us to talk about safety in Pilsen are Alvaro Obregon, president and founder of the Chicago Mariachi Project and founder of Hoops in the Hood, Marisela Garcia, CEO, Gads Hill Center, which provides youth programs, Jeff Maldonado, founder and creative director of the J-Deaf Peace Project, which also works with young people, Yesenia Cervantes, she's director of the Center for Working Families at Instituto del Progreso Latino, and Glenn Brooks, director of public engagement for the Chicago Police Department. And remember to join the conversation. You can tweet us your ideas for enhancing safety in your community at WTTW using hashtag #MyNeighborhood and hashtag Pilsen. Alvaro, let me begin with you, and that is, how do you engage kids in productive and constructive ways?
Well, I think it's one of the most important jobs that we have in our community. What we did at the Resurrection Project back in 1999, I was a leader. Still in the community. I was working on my block club, but I became very active. And, you know, we were facing a time where there was a lot of shootings, and, you know, that was one of the most important things for us to do, is to really bring people together. I was one of the co-founders. You know, there were other people that were part of this project. And what we did was we started taking over hotspots. You know, one thing that people say all the time is, like, let's take the kids off of the streets. Well, I completely disagree with that. I think we have to take problems off of the streets, because the streets really belong to families and to young people. And so we have to have programs such as sports, such as arts programs.
Let me interrupt you, because tell us about sports. You started something called Hoops in the Hood. What is that?
Well, I was one of the people that started Resurrection Basketball League. And that was taking over hotspots. We played on Friday evening when there could potentially be a lot of things jumping off on a block, and we just created a safe environment. I've never played a game of basketball in my life. And yet here I was, you know, spending every Friday with these kids. And so what was happening was that they were building relationships with each other. Neighbors were meeting each other. We were providing safe spaces. And just that is something that grew and went to the little village, and then it became Hoops in the Hood. And so it's kind of heartening when you see this little project that you really did from the heart turn into something that is now across in, I think, 16 or 17 neighborhoods across the city of Chicago.
Wow. Marisela Garcia. Maricela, how do you engage kids in a constructive way? Show them the path.
We focus primarily in ensuring that they succeed in school. We provide mentoring, tutoring. We expose them to art, to enrichment that also includes STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, and math. For the kids who are committed to going to college, which is many of them, we take them to college tours, we provide internships for them, and we employ them to teach adults in the community how to use computers. So what we notice is that the more opportunities that you give to kids, the more productive and successful they are. Their parents are very hardworking, build very hardworking habits, and the children need safe places and productive places to explore their talents and to do well.
Jeff Maldonado, your son was an innocent victim of gang violence, and you lost your son, and my condolences on your loss, even though it's been a while. How about you? What does your organization do in a way to keep other young people from being victims, innocent victims of gang violence?
Right, so Jada Peace Project was born after my son Jeff Jr. was murdered the day after his 19th birthday. And I think as a parent and an artist, it was a way to transform that anger, you know, that frustration. And as a thank you to the community, it was beginning this Jada Peace Project as an organic organization, bringing back those values of public art and social responsibility to our youth. I mean, really, it's a preventative organization where we're working with youth before they get into any sort of trouble. It's providing a safe place for them and some guidance to transform and nurture that creativity.
Yesenia, it strikes me after watching the documentary and just listening to the panelists so far, it really seems like every community needs different components that are working on the same goal. How does your organization fit in that piece of the puzzle?
We actually offer wraparound services, education being upfront. We believe that education is power, and anything that can prevent the kids and the young population of being better for themselves and for their communities. We strongly believe that education is the #1 thing. So at my organization, Instituto, we actually have 2 high schools. And one of them is the Healthcare Institute of Science Academy, and the other one is the Justice Leadership Academy. And then the third area of services that we offer is wraparound services. We also offer job placement services throughout the summer and throughout the year. So we offer for them, for the youth, especially for the adult and young adults, different programs, including the job readiness, financial coaching. We also offer college trips and anything that has to do with college readiness education. We believe that in order for them to maintain themselves out of the street, they have to be surrounded by role models. So a lot of the programming that we do, it's internally in the organization, and we bring them speakers. We partner up with different employers. We partner up with different non-for-profit organizations that we're working with, that we bring them into the organization. We strongly believe that in addition of having programs and services for them, they also have to be accompanied by role models, people that they can actually see and look up to. Or services, in addition of being for them, we try to be family oriented. So for every service that we offer, we register the student, but we actually try to provide services for the entire family, because we strongly believe that in order for them to have a strong support system, it has to be beyond what Instituto offers. We have to bring the entire family around the services, and that everybody should be serviced.
Glenn Brooks, you saw the documentary. You just watched it along with the rest of the audience. You've heard the other panelists talk about the efforts that they are making in an effort to engage young people. What has been the impact on law enforcement in terms of the benefits that these programs have provided?
Tremendous, absolutely tremendous. When a lot of times we talk about crime, we speak about chronic crime, we always want to talk about how the police are going to come to a neighborhood and arrest a number of bad people. And here's the fact: communities aren't bad, and everybody in the community isn't bad. It takes the community to come together and wrap its arm around those people in the community who just get lost. They actually just get off the track. And when the community comes together and when they provide programming, when they provide opportunities to mentor, when they provide opportunities to bring families together, we know that creates a safer neighborhood.
Has that been reflected in statistics relating to Pilsen?
Absolutely. When we look at Pilsen over a 10, 15-year time frame, Pilsen is not the same area. We still have challenges there, but we don't have the same level of violence we had in the 90s and 2000s. Pilsen has transformed into a safer neighborhood. And it wasn't just the fact that we arrested people, it was the fact that community came together, empowered themselves, organized, and supported each other. And we played a role in it, but let's not forget, the community's role is as important, if not more, because that's what truly makes it safe.
We received a question via Twitter, and I'll open it up to anyone on the panel. What are the ways city and state elected officials can support the community organizations in Pilsen protecting families? Anyone?
I'll take a stab at that. Our communities need more programs, you know, whether it's work that is happening with sports programs. I'm the founder of Chicago Mariachi Project. The arts are extremely important. You know, they need to be able to fund programs that are in the community, and this impasse that we're having, you know, at the state level, we need a budget that is passed so that these funds can go to communities and that people in communities who know communities can do their work. And these are the types of things, you know, these are the experts, the people that are up here, the people that are working really hard inside of our communities.
Let's get back to the issue of specifically public safety. How would you describe the current gang situation in Pilsen? Anyone?
I think in the past 7 years since Jeff's murder, we have been active in dealing with the gang problem, or the gang problem as it was before. So we would move our program to certain areas where there was that gang presence, and eventually, because of our youth and partners on the police force and with other community organizations, we had managed to actually move the gangs out, or they would actually find some other corner that was less intrusive for them. So I agree. It was definitely the effort is there to not be afraid to put a spotlight on it, you know, and to or create murals where there's some neighborhood blight that needs to be changed. Our flagship mural on 18th and Paulina deals with just that. That was a real hot spot. And the first year that we were out there was, I mean, it was scary. We had students of ours who were terrified. And so, you know, there's 30 teens, and we have both a gang patrol on foot, and we also have gang patrols in vehicles. And so, you know, sticking it out and being dedicated to the work that needs to be done in addressing violence in youth, that's how we feel we've been able to help in that change.
Now we're going to go to the audience, and our Eddie Aruza is out there, and so is Univision Chicago's Adriana Cardona, who you just saw in her report about safety in Pilsen. And Adriana, you have someone in the audience who has something to say?
Yeah, we have Magda Ramirez Castañeda. She's the president of the Pilsen Alliance. Go ahead.
Yes, good evening. I'm very moved by what's going on tonight. But to me, the word here in danger is gentrification. We are going to be extinct. We are not going to have Latino families as we want to hope for. The other thing is, I learned something as a child. Home is where the heart is. But without a home, where are our hearts? In the past 10 years, we have lost more than 10,000 residents living in Pilsen community. We have been presented and bombarded with all kinds of advertisements as to looking at the paseo, looking at something positive to gentrification. But I hate to blow the bubble of the organization called TRP. I know they mean well, and I know they've been organizing for many years. But you know, neighbors and friends, we have to come to reality. Our people are not being given affordable housing.
You know, excuse
me. So anyway, I just wanted to ask the question of the people that are up there. Yes, and so I want to know, what can all of you say to talk about the important thing of gentrification and affordable housing in Pilsen?
You're jumping ahead of us. That's the subject of our next segment, so hold that thought. Eddie Aruza.
Phil, I'm here with Chicago Police Department Captain Phil Kwasinski. And Captain Kwasinski, what are your thoughts?
I would just like to thank the Pilsen Planning Commission who put together the quality of life plan for Pilsen. It has made my job and my officers' jobs incredibly better. I would just like to point out the Resurrection Project, the work that they do in diffusing conflicts. When we have a violent incident, they will actually have they reach out to us or we reach out to them. They actually have a block party where it occurred, which includes a mass. And we have grandmothers, families out in chairs, a priest in his full vestments. And you want to talk about a de-escalator. Your program is going on very, very well.
And at this point, we'd like to thank our panelists for joining us. Let's give them a round of applause, please. But as we just heard from the audience member, the issue of development can be a divisive one in a community. Progress doesn't always come without a price, so how is Pilsen dealing with growth and development? We begin with this story from our partners at Univision Chicago, and here is Enrique Rodriguez.
Buenos días, ¿cómo están? Bienvenidos. Inocencio El Güero Carvajal has enjoyed much success and delighted residents in Pilsen over the last 42 years with carnitas, or little meat, a pork dish of Mexican cuisine originating from the state of Michoacán.
Tratando a la gente bien y respetando a la gente. Es eso, trate el producto que esté bueno, que la gente regrese. Ese es el éxito de cualquier negocio, la perseverancia sobre todo.
Inocencio is now passing his success and legacy to his only son, Marcos, who recently received his master's degree in marketing from Northwestern University. Marcos has brought new ideas, including the use of social media, to the business. The restaurant has been featured on a variety of food shows.
Our business has been growing continually at double-digit rates the last 3 years. We've far outgrown our space. We're very fortunate that we have literally lines out the door on the weekends here, and it necessitates growth on our part to be able to meet that demand.
Cafes also play a key role in Pilsen's economy. One example is Salvador Corona. 4 years ago, he opened Café Katrina on 18th Street with a unique approach.
Cuisine from Mexico, art, music, and it's what we love. You know, we grew up, with that kind of culture, and that's what we want to, we incorporate it in the cafe, and people like it.
But according to Alex Esparza, executive director of the 18th Street Development Corporation, other mom-and-pop businesses are having trouble coping with demographic change, new technology, and business philosophy in Pilsen.
In the past 3 years, we've lost about 8% of mom-and-pop shops. This equals about to 68 businesses closed that were once operated by papa mama shops, parents being in back of the counter, kids running the business.
High rents, empty spaces, and the lack of access to capital are additional challenges facing small Latino business owners in the community. But there is help available.
So we help them with their financials and help them get access to capital to run their businesses. We do want them to stay here, so we're here to provide them the support and resources that they need.
Mary Kuhn emphasizes the number of approved licenses for small businesses in Pilsen increased in 2016. However, another concern is how they'll be able to embrace the continuous arrival of big box retailers like Costco.
I think that we have solid businesses in our community that can stand by themselves and stand shoulder to shoulder with any competition. With that being said, we also should embrace the welcome of more big box retailers, because that means that something good is happening in Pilsen.
So good that Pilsen is now the home of California-based Lagunitas Brewing, a company originally founded by Karen Hamilton and her brothers. Lagunitas exports beer nationally and to Europe, putting Chicago and Pilsen in the map. Its popular beer tasting has become a favorite attraction for locals and tourists. But the question is,
what do you say to those who feel big companies like Lagunitas don't hire local workers?
Initially, with only 200 jobs, we're going to have a small impact. But over the 100+ years that we plan on being here, we hope that we have a much bigger impact over the lifetime of the communities and beyond.
without a doubt, the evolution and new economic dynamic in Pilsen is appealing to some new businesses. So much that Chef Alfonso Sotelo, who work and train under internationally acclaimed chef Rick Bayless, chose this neighborhood to open Cinco Rabanitos, his first restaurant.
El reto más importante es mantenerse firme, ponerle muchas ganas, tener entusiasmo en nuestra comida, y ver y crear ideas nuevas para que sigan viniendo nuevas generaciones, introducirles a las nuevas generaciones qué importante es nuestra comida.
Culinary art that he hopes will bring a new taste and economic impact to this vibrant and culturally rich community. For Univision and WTTW, I'm Enrique Rodriguez.
Now joining us to talk about economic development in Pilsen are 25th Ward Alderman Danny Solis, Raul Raimundo, CEO of the Resurrection Project, Alex Ruiz, loan officer at Acción Chicago, Victoria Romero of the Pilsen Alliance, and Megan Hart, she's Executive Director of LISC of Chicago, that is a local initiative support corporation. And remember to join the conversation. You can tweet us how you weigh the pros and cons of development in your community at WTTW using hashtag MyNeighborhood and hashtag Pilsen. Alderman, typically I begin with the highest ranking public official on a panel, but if you don't mind, I'd like to begin with Raul, because Raul, we heard a member of the audience express concerns about the work that you've done in terms of balancing development and gentrification, the ability of residents to stay in the community. What's your reaction?
We're very proud of the work that we've done over the last 27 years since this organization was founded, have developed hundreds of affordable housing units in the community. And we are excited about the future. The future of Pilsen has a lot of renaissance. There's a lot of mom and pop businesses supported by the community residents. As you saw from the clip, there's also new businesses coming in that we have to welcome. But our job is not done. You saw from the film people coming together, and we need to come together to address other challenges that are facing the community. Yes, higher prices in the community is one of those challenges, but we have to also work with families, homeowners, and get them to stay. The fastest way a community changes is when people choose to leave. And we want to make sure that people choose to stay. The challenge is to build a healthy community, not to move to one. And we'll continue to build on that.
Alderman, you're seen as pro-development. How do you develop? How do you balance development with the needs of the community, the people who are already there?
Well, you've got to organize, which I think is the basic theme that we've heard here in the documentary today. I think Raul is a great example in terms of what this Raul was talking about. He stayed. He bought his home, and his kids bought homes, and they're investing in the long term. I think that what we've done with Resurrection, every city property that is available, we've given it to them so that they can build housing, affordable housing, whether it's rental, senior, student housing, or single family. And then we got to create jobs, and that's the reason why the Pilsen Industrial Corridor was turned into a TIF, so that we can clean up that area, we can improve the infrastructure, and then attract hundreds of businesses that have created thousands of jobs.
Vicky Romero, I know you have concerns about development negatively affecting the community. What are your concerns?
Absolutely. I think there's a huge concern with the word gentrification. There's a huge difference between revitalization, which starts from the community up, versus gentrification being from the developers down, and then eventually out of the community. And that is a huge concern. One of the problems that we see today is the term affordability. When you look at the median income in Pilsen, it is $10,000 less than the average median income across Cook County. And that's huge. $10,000 is a lot of money for a working class family. And so people in my neighborhood, they're not concerned about having these businesses come in or having new neighbors come in, they're concerned about not being able to afford to stay when they are the ones who put the blood, sweat, and tears in our neighborhood to make it what it is today. No one came in and waved a magic wand and made Pilsen attractive. There are decades of history of organizing, of mobilizing behind the neighborhood and what it is today. And so to have those same people be pushed out of our neighborhood is insulting. And
a quick response to that from either the alderman or Raul.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Vicki was said, and I think we are those people that she is referring to, staying in the neighborhood, organizing, working with other organizations to be able to continue to provide opportunities in the community. With the alderman, we're working on making sure that any new development, this is the only community where this is taking place, where any new development that requires a zoning change of 8 units or more has to have 21% set aside. That's twice the city requirement, and that's because we have to work with community organizations, we have to work with business, we have to work with government, and coming together, we have to be putting those plans forward. And
we
so
need to
we're
add residents to that list, though.
And
We
there are
absolutely
residents
need to.
in part of this effort as we're moving forward.
Alex, let's move on to another issue besides housing. I didn't mean to cut you off, but how does your organization help businesses in Pilsen access capital?
Absolutely. Action Chicago is a nonprofit that has actually had its offices there in Pilsen since 1994. And we, in the last 7 years, have done over 64 loans in Pilsen and continue to work in that area and to provide lending to small business owners. We feel that through entrepreneurship, you could change neighborhoods. And that's where we want to empower not only entrepreneurs that are recently moving into Pilsen, but even empower residents and business owners that have been there for many years and continue to grow.
To somebody who's driving down 18th Street today, how many empty storefronts do you see?
Me personally, I live on 18th Street. I walk up and down the street every single day, and I've seen very limited, very few, and there's been a huge jump.
Megan Hart, what lessons can Pilsen teach other communities about development?
So I think Pilsen is sort of the perfect example of having all of the critical assets that a community would need for economic development. It has a vibrant industrial corridor. It has jobs that match the skills of the residents in the neighborhood. It's got a vibrant retail corridor to provide the amenities for people that live there. It's got dense population, access to transportation, proximal to downtown, anchor institutions with universities and hospitals, and a very connected, collaborative environment of organizations from the aldermen to the neighborhood organizations that really work together and bring the issues to light and then try and address them.
We have a question from Twitter, and it gets back to the question about gentrification. And a viewer asks, can Pilsen maintain its Hispanic roots despite the large economic and demographic change in the last 20 years? Alderman.
Yes, absolutely. We have the most dynamic group of organizations than any other neighborhood in the city of Chicago. This 21% that Raul alluded to, there's no other neighborhood in the city that has that demand on developers that come in. Right now, El Grito happens in Pilsen. El Dia de los Niños parade happens in Pilsen. Every public institution that has been created under my tenure has a Mexican-themed culture, whether it be Orozco School, the Paseo de Héroes, whether it's Plaza Tenochtitlan, and you can go on and on. El Paseo that right now we're working on, everything is focused on the Mexican heritage, Mexican culture. That is the last group of people that came into Pilsen.
Vicki,
Vicki, a quick response, Vicki?
Absolutely. I'll try to make it quick. One of the things about policy like the 21% set aside is it's only good is if you enforce it. That's the thing. And without transparency in our community, without knowing, I'll give you an example. We just had a development right across the street from Benito Juarez. And instead of out and out committing to the 21%, they went and decided, I'm going to buy this parcel of land and donate it to Benito Juarez High School, which sounds phenomenal. However, all they're doing is buying a piece of land and giving it back to the city when that is money that should already be there for that piece of land for that high school. And so what seems like a gift oftentimes is not. And while 21% does sound like a high number when you compare it to 10 or 11%. It is still not enough because, again, we go back to that word affordability, and that is the key.
Quick response, Raul.
Yes, that particular development that Vicky is referring to, we're proud to be able to make sure that an acre, which in this time could cost a lot of money, is being donated to the entire community because it's right next to Benito Juarez High School. They are in the future will be able to assign land to be able to use it for recreational fields that is going to benefit the entire community.
If you added the value of that 1 acre, it would be 28% that the community would be getting in terms of affordable housing.
At this point, I'd like to go to the audience. And Adriana, you have somebody who has a question on development?
Yeah, we have Young Han who has a question about the art district in Pilsen.
Yeah, I was wondering what is happening with the Podmajersky-owned property in the eastern end of Pilsen at 18th and Halstead. That was a Pilsen art district that was going to be developed, and it's kind of a lot of vacancies there now. So I'm just wondering what the community's vision is for that.
You know, that strip does now belong to the 11th Ward, and Patrick Thompson would be better able to answer that.
But if I could, it's been part of the Pilsen community. People will probably still recognize the Pilsen community. That area always was sort of the gateway for gentrification. It's always been seen that way. But as you pointed out right now, there's a lot of vacancy in that area. We're waiting to see. We have to evaluate it. But, you know, artists also are working class folks. We want to make sure that the space for artists are also available for them.
There's also a family legal battle going on between the two survivors of Mr. Podmajersky, his son and his sister. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why they're having this problem.
Eddie Ruza, you have someone.
Bill, this is Maggie Steins, and she's on the Community Advisory Board here at WTTW, but she's also a longtime educator, and she has a comment and question for the panel.
I do. I want to emphasize the link between education and community development. And back in the day, in the 80s and 90s, when this was much tougher, I could almost cry. I get so emotional when I see how this has come up since then. Because Por Murillo Mejor, Latino Youth, Instituto, all of those, I traded off funds so that more community-based organizations could be funded directly at the time. And education makes a difference. But I also was a district director at City Colleges in Adult Learning. And one of my assignments was to go to a city council meeting. And at that city council meeting, there were, I'd say, 20, 30 elderly couples in their 70s and 80s from Little Village. Now, Little Village and Back of the Yards aren't enjoying this feast. And I know the feast is hard-earned, but it's the same population. And that was when tax increment financing was coming in there. And people who had worked hard and invested and bought their own homes, now in their late years of life, were losing them because they couldn't afford the taxes. And they stood up and turned their back on the mayor and stood there for 10 minutes. It was the most powerful thing I've seen. And I'm hoping that there would be a contagion about all of this. And economic development's link to education, especially with youth, is important, not just for the violence, but also for the binding.
And what is your question for the panel?
So my question is, how did you stave this off? How did this not happen in Pilsen when it's happening in those two other communities which butt up against it?
Who wants to take that?
The organizing, the dozens of community organizations that are organizing on whatever issue that is immigration, education, economic development, immigration. We had the first meeting at Benito Juarez a week before Christmas with about 300 DACA students from Benito Juarez, and we were preparing them on how to deal with the results of the election and what their rights and what the laws were. And that took organizing. And
yeah, what I could want to add to that is that, first and foremost, there are still many residents in the community who have stayed there, have worked very hard to make Pilsen what it is, what Vicki was talking about earlier. But these organizations are also not just headquartered in Pilsen and working in Pilsen, but they're beginning to spread their wings to other neighborhoods, Back of the Yards, Little Village, partnering with those organizations there, building both on the tangible assets and non-tangible assets that exist as they did in Pilsen. So our work is not done in Pilsen only. Alivio, Mujeres, Instituto, while they might be in Pilsen doing a wonderful work, they're also doing wonderful work in other places as well.
We have a question, Adriana.
We have
Tomasa Avalos, she's a resident of Pilsen.
Yes, I've been a resident of Pilsen for 30 plus years. My children grew up in Pilsen as well. The reason why I'm here is because I can no longer afford to live in Pilsen. I just was given a 30-day notice. My rent has been increased double. I wish to stay in Pilsen, but I cannot afford it. So my question to you, Alderman Solis, is what are you doing about situations like this with families that are being evicted, that wish to stay in Pilsen, but cannot afford it anymore? What is your take on rent control?
I think that I think rent control is a key issue that I'm exploring with the advice of Raul Raimundo. He's coming up with a strategy on how to do that in Pilsen. But I think the main issue is how do we get people that live in Pilsen, that own property in Pilsen, to invest in the long term and stay in Pilsen. You want to answer that?
Eddie Arruza.
Phil, this is Sylvia Rogel. What is your comment or question?
My question is, how do you plan, or what is the process to keeping renters, to giving them the opportunity to really become homeowners? Because if they don't have that opportunity, they will continue to be pushed out. They'll be pushed out of the back of the yards, out of Little Village. This process will continue if the opportunity for them to become homeowners doesn't exist. Alderman, what are you doing to provide for your residents that opportunity?
I'll tell you again. Resurrection Project is probably the most successful organization in the city of Chicago in terms of affordable housing. Any kind of resources that they need from the city for single-family affordable housing, for senior housing, for rental housing, for student housing, I've helped them to do that. The second point is any development that happens in Pilsen has to agree to 21% affordable housing in that development if it's 8 units or more.
If I could add, it's very important that anybody who's a current property owner in Pilsen and is watching this Pilsen, my neighborhood, to remain in Pilsen. All studies indicate that the more homeowner-occupied residents in the community, there's more affordability. The challenge we're facing is that there are a lot of investors coming in and buying property, and it's very easy for a family who bought a building for $20,000 in the 70s to be offered 10 times that much in today's prices. And they build wealth, it's part of their retirement, but that is what's going on. But we want to make sure that if they're going to sell, is there another neighbor, another relative, another family they can also invite to Pilsen?
And that's what we're going to have to leave it. A round of applause, please, for Alderman Danny Solis, Raul Raimundo, Vicky Romero, Alex Ruiz, and Megan Hart. And thank you for joining us for tonight's Town Hall event. We hope the story of Pilsen will inspire many communities across Chicago to have a dialogue about how that neighborhood is facing the future. Throughout the spring and summer, WTTW will conduct screening of My Neighborhood Pilsen and host community conversations and panel discussions addressing many of the issues you heard about this evening. And you can continue the conversation we started today. Visit WTTW.com/myneighborhood to let us know if you are interested in having an event in your neighborhood. Thanks once again to our partners at Univision Chicago, and thank you for watching. Good night.
My neighborhood, Pilsen, has been made possible by the generous support of the Caris Foundation, Incorporated.
Closed captioning for this program has been brought to you by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, sponsors of the Chicago Bar Foundation's Investing in Justice campaign that works to ensure everyone has access to necessary legal help.